Doomfist, and I was trying to like theorize about the game in sort of like I guess sort of just like from a tanking perspective, but also just how much
Yeah.
the game has changed and kind of coming to base with like the I think there's a lot of new things moving in Overwatch, and I think a lot of people are being displaced in their ranks and stuff like that, and having hard times, especially tank
Yeah.
players.
Yeah.
And
Agreed.
I was trying to figure out what's in common with all the tank players, or what was in common with so many tank players that were having a harder time, and the ones that were having an easier time. What characters, what strategies, and and it just seemed like, yeah, a lot of the tanks that naturally, like the most straightforward way of playing them, provided that passive value, were succeeding more.
Right.
You know, like Reinhardt and stuff like that, with win rates
Right.
specifically, like statistically.
Right.
And then the characters that didn't, any character that was like burst of value character, your like your Doomfists or your Genjis
Yeah.
and stuff like that, were worse off. And then even if you look at like the dive tanks like Ball or Doomfist or Diva or things like that, the ones that were the most active and the most high uptime, the ones that could keep their uptime just based off of their
It's
stat
your
profile,
Juno
were the ones that.
theory, you know. I agree with it. You know, the more I've been playing Juno, I think like obviously trying to find ways to like leverage your off angles, but like, dude, it feels like you have to know your threats 10 seconds before it happens. You know, you have to
Yeah,
start putting damage out 10 seconds before things actually start to go
yeah,
crazy because
yeah.
there is no like burst of value. It's just constant pressure. Otherwise, you're cooked.
I think that's generally, like, if I had to put a thesis to Overwatch post season 9, but also just like the future of Overwatch, I think that's really where the game has moved towards, and what has kind of like confused some people is that there's been a
Yeah,
massive shift towards a higher placement of value towards like executing passively very
right,
well,
right.
versus the old way of playing Overwatch. And like the 6v6ers kind of have this like in their camp of sort of like the, it feels like in 6v6 it was much more of a burst value moment like thing, and it was like
Right.
old combos to do these burst value things, and the game has slowly gradually been moving from that to what it is now.
Right.
um so I think playing into that could be very punishing. And so yeah,
Well,
for
you're allowed to
Doomfist,
control
it's like,
space
yeah,
for a long time now. You know, you have heal passive, you have a lot more space on the map to do things that you want. And even things like the whole Kevster principle or playing the clock or whatever. And really the season 9 as a whole, right? Like there's a
mhm,
lot fewer one shots. So it's like, it's just much more about like, are you making the right decisions in current, like you can't just, like you said, just do something stupid, bam, get a kill. And that's it.
yeah,
It's like
yeah. And
constant
there's,
pressure.
it seems like certain parts of the game haven't changed that much, where it's like the value of attention that you can get from people, but it's like the I think that attention being contributed to like a passive resource generation from each team has
Yeah.
become so high that if you can successfully distract people, and it can massively turn it. So that's what I learned on Doomfist, is like I was just sort of like doing this whole, all I have to do all I have to do is wait and constantly go to passive positions, and I don't even have to play the game. I don't have to kill people. I don't have to do nothing.
Yep.
All I have to do is just like constantly, if I'm getting two people ever to
Yeah.
pay attention to me, and I'm not like expending too many resources to do it, which Doomfist is good at that because he can go so far, then I'm slowly upsetting the balance. And then it's just like it feels like a nerdy way to play Overwatch. It's like
It
the
is.
stats
It
way,
is. Yeah.
because you're
It
just like,
is.
I'm just like, I know my win rate's got to be 60% doing this, even though I'm not making crazy plays, just because I know that I'm unbalancing the resources.
You wonder if there's like the 66 thing there where like the dopamine of the tank trade, because there's something that you can be doing when you don't have space. It's like
Yeah.
if you're Winston, you're not staging necessarily. You're just jumping front line and trying to like play the bubble trade with your Zarya properly so that then you can actually do what you want to do. But like there is like even support in 66 was like weird because it was like abort things that I didn't like to do, but I was doing a
Hmm.
lot of them. Like I was
Yeah,
healing a
yeah,
lot, you know, like there was no flank nade or anything like that, but there was a lot of the healing noise over and over and over again. So it's
yeah.
like, oh man, it's just
Well, and
a
I think it plays against. So I've talked about ADHD before, and like
yeah,
the proclivity of like especially competitive, like high skill, lots of things going on video games like Overwatch, where it's like
yeah,
super nuanced and dynamic, and so many different feedback systems. I think that's really stimulating to a certain type of person. And I think there's an overrepresentation probably of people with ADHD in that
for
category.
sure.
And so one of the interesting things that I found is that people can't handle, like, if you play in a boring way, people can't handle it. And most mistakes I found, even through coaching recently, have often been like even when you did, I think you did
Target
it was
priority.
like a week, maybe, yeah, it was about a week ago. I think you did a take. It was like, post me your tank carry game, and I want to see,
Oh yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
When we did all of those
yeah.
VOD reviews, it was the same thing I was seeing in my VOD reviews, which is like the answer to what they should be doing better. It almost always was doing less. Almost
Right,
always.
right.
Um, so maximizing the passive value and not basically getting bored and wanting to do something fun, wanting to do
Right.
something cool.
Well,
And I think,
it's the thing that they want to do is the thing that doesn't necessarily make noises on their screen. Like the thing that I say probably more than any other thing in my VOD reviews by like at least double is setup. And setup
yeah.
doesn't reward you with ticky tick noises on your crosshair.
Yeah, and it's really interesting from a game design perspective, and I think it has a lot to do with how people feel about Overwatch right now, because there's all this nebulous stuff about, like, tank feels this way. Everybody's complaining all the time about how the game's feeling. It's not feeling as fun. It's not feeling as intuitive. It's not feeling like what. I guess intuitive is a good word. Like, it's not feeling as straightforward as what you should be doing to get, like on Juno, for example. You have these mobilities, but you're just kind of meant to. Whenever you do that, you end up getting punished. But I think that's kind of what's happened in the game. Is often cases on most heroes that I've looked at recently. It's the same sort of thing. It's like maximizing your passive and taking less risks has seemed to be. It just seems to be better. And where I see the folly is people just want to have fun. And the problem, I think, that Overwatch is currently facing right now might be from like a psychological perspective, is like a conflict between fun and winning.
Yeah,
It's
I
like,
agree. I agree.
I want to do something fun, but when I do that, it's actually the wrong thing to do. And
The
the right thing
activeness
to do is being boring.
the activeness is really in the setup phase, right? And in terms of what positions that you're taking, that's where there's not near enough mental activity from 99% of players. And in which then that's compensated by, like you said, too much activity and trying to chase value out of CDs or chase value out of kills instead of just, setting up and letting the opportunities present themselves.
Yeah.
It's not that like proactivity is bad, but it needs to be starting with the setup. And I think that that's the part that doesn't reward it with dopamine, right?
Yeah, and it's the part that also conflicts with the basic human. We've talked about this before. It's like one of the basic human fallacies is like long term versus short term. We like to do things short term that are fun and engaging to us. Waiting for a while where you're playing a high paced game and not doing anything makes you feel first of all, it like preys on like what a lot of people struggle with, which is like, I want to justify my value to my team. I don't want to get picked on. I don't want to be the guy who's not getting value. So I want to constantly be getting those value and chase, like, not necessarily even chasing stat numbers, but mentally chasing, like,
of course,
team.
Seeking validation, really.
Yes. So you're doing things all the time, and like that's a personality that you find in these games.
Validation and visibility is a key one for me
Yes.
too, where people are concerned about doing something because of how it would look or the fact that they don't see my team.
Yeah. And I think that yeah, that there's a strong conflict there that that is basically it's basically, yeah, it basically just punishes you for doing those things and yeah, just that boring way of playing. But I think that there's what I've been taking advantage of, or what I was taking advantage of, the passive tanking thing, is that I think that it can be really fun if you can find enjoyment of abusing that metagame. So if you get into your mind, like, I know what I'm going to do, and this is how I'm going to trigger my plan, then it kind of gets fun. So like with Doomfist, you're jumping around and passively making them basically get bored and get frustrated so that they do something. And then when they do it, they get punished.
I was reading a book called Switch, and they talk about how like a lot of the ways to provoke change in people is to make them believe that they're a type of person that acts in a certain way. Give them an identity to kind of marry themselves to. And so for me, I've always had an easy time with the more boring, with the more patient strategies and most characters that I play, because I know the value of them, and I say, ah, ha, ha, look at me outsmarting you. And so I feel some sort of dopamine out of doing that. A lot of players don't do that, so you have to kind of teach them that that's what you need to do. Like, Overwatch is an ADHD game for thinking people, which is a really weird dynamic.
And you've probably seen this through coaching, just like I've been seeing it. One of the things that I see 90% of the time, the student knows exactly what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
You pause and you say, like, what do you think is the correct play right now? What do you think? What are you thinking about? They know immediately. They know. It's like, okay, why can't you do it in the game? But the thing is, the thing is, I already know the answer to that. And I'm not frustrated with them, because that's the thing. It's the whole point of coaching. Is like, how can we get you to do what you're supposed to do? But that's the issue. It's like the same thing in pool. It's like people like to make cool shots. They like to do the fun part of the game. They're having fun. And there's a disconnect when sometimes at a certain point, to improve or to succeed, you have to sacrifice some of your fun
Yeah.
to make correct decisions. But I think that if you know that, you're at an advantage if you want to climb, if that's something that
I
brings you
agree.
enjoyment.
The one thing that I think that is really nice for Overwatch though is if you do sow the seeds, like if you do set up, do the boring activity and set up on the right angle, it does allow you to kind of be a little bit ADHD once you're there. Like if you think about, like, I've worked with some players that they're gonna do what I do. They're gonna take the angle and they're just gonna get passive value and you're just gonna shoot, you know. But then I've also worked with players that they're always going to take the highest card reward play. Like maybe they'll set up and then they're going to take the ego duel. They're going to pop off things. And I think like that's where it's like, I think if you do the investment, then you're allowed to do the silly ego thing. Because like even if it fails, it's still value, right? I think the biggest challenge for me is just getting people to do the initial investment and then go feed, right? The initial investment.
You sound like a guy who's selling like those like pills you take or something.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah,
we just need one small investment and everything you do is going to be great.
Yeah, exactly. Or like the dad, it's like, listen,
right,
you can crack cocaine and heroin, but you have to do your push-ups first.
Yeah,
if you eat your vegetables, then you're allowed to go do heroin. You know,
right.
But I do find that like there are variability in play style. Like there are options of high risk, high reward, lowest low reward. I mean, I just did a VOD review a few minutes ago where we talked about casting. Like almost every fight, there was the low risk, low reward setup. There was the high risk, high reward setup where you could just basically kamikaze and kill 6 or die. As long as you choose one, you just have to set up for one, you know. And I think like that's the hard part. But like you said, it's hard because it is a delayed reward for the setup, you know. So.
Yeah. Well, and consistency is, I think, one of the. I think I've told you this before, but I think like consistency is like one of the most valuable human traits. It's why you can have like the person who's like, he's an asshole, but once you get to know him, and then that kind of person would be allowed to like, be rude or say annoying things, but people will give him a pass. But like if you have a really nice person and they say one rude thing, then immediately, we're gonna tear that person up or whatever.
Right.
How are you when it comes to like that? Like, are you?
Okay. I mean, I used to be I had a bit of a temper in high school and even younger than that. But I've mostly, I wouldn't say I've like suppressed the emotion, but I've learned to process it better and understood like the value of it and I think like, especially when I've really tried, I think, to kind of be the type of person that I ought to be in my position, because this isn't just an Overwatch development. This was something that was important back when I was doing coaching mixed martial arts. Like you are the mentor. Whenever people do martial arts, you got to teach discipline. You got to be a great example for the kids. And so I really tried to be like the person that I needed to be with that. And so just it was really important for my identity to be that person. And that is something that it takes time and practice. But I find myself to be I feel fairly in control of my emotions. Like I can process things. I still feel them, but I'm able to process them relatively well, which is, I know, a bit of a departure from the stream persona, but I don't really have any issues.
You are familiar with experiencing emotions and like understanding the severity of them necessarily, but then you have like you have a rationale or an ethics to how you
processing them.
You temper that.
And especially when you compete.
Your eyes when you were talking about that, you looked down. Were you thinking about something else?
I was.
Is there something relevant to this?
No, I was thinking about like all the different things that I think have affected my emotions. I think one of them is like just competing a lot, like whether it was like flag football or tackle football or sports or Brazilian jiu-jitsu or whatever. It's like there's all things going to be pushing your buttons, so it's like
you have a specific time that you remember like you just didn't do that at all, where like you really cemented that?
Like as in I cemented what specifically?
Like do you have a moment where you remember like really having that emotional outburst and it being unacceptable or something like that kind of taught you like what, earlier on or something?
Not really. There was definitely a period of time like earlier in my gaming career when I was like in a pretty toxic community and it was pretty toxic. And I remember I had this one moment one time. It wasn't specifically like anger, but like I had this moment. I was like, dude, like what if like some of the students saw like some of the mean things? Like I used to troll people all the time, and I was like, dude, this is, especially as a Christian, like I was really like did some soul searching. I was like, this is not the example I want to be setting. This is like, I need to be better than this. I'm gonna be better than this. And then that was pretty much it. Like it's just like, again, like asking myself, like, is this who, like, that was what I was saying earlier. It's very motivating to when this is who I am, that's how I need to act. And it's like, well, that's how it is. That's as simple as that.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think then about like recently? Like, I know you had a tweet recently about kind of
Yeah.
negativity regarding Overwatch and stuff like that. How does that stack up? Like when you see other people that that kind of necessarily aren't abiding to those types of ethical principles, how do you feel about that? Does it bother you?
I wasn't as emotional about that thing as I think people said. It was more of like I needed to come to the defense of people that I care about, you know, within not just the developers, because I think that that's obvious, but like to also it's like people that just legitimately enjoy the game. I'm tired of being people shouldn't feel guilty for enjoying Overwatch, myself included. So to me, it was more of a self-defense mechanism, and then I wanted to say that publicly.
Nah,
Um, and
self-defense, but you said for other people, you were defending others.
right, right, that's very important to me. That's very important to
Really?
me. Yeah,
Tell me
very
about that.
important.
Where'd you learn
Um,
that?
I I don't know. I guess being the oldest of seven kids, you kind of get in that idea where like, you know, I don't like it when people pick on my wife. I'm not gonna, you know, I'm not the typical like Southern man that's gonna like challenge you to a duel, right?
You dumb son of a bitch, I'll get
Yeah, yeah,
you.
pretty much. I have my reasonable limitations, but even in like Overwatch, like people trash talk me all the time in Overwatch. But we used to do stacks, and people would flame Pepper or flame my brother-in-law or whatever we do, and I would like, I would. I'm never sure that Overwatch has chat logs and some of this stuff. You know, like I'm not threatening anybody, but I was like, dude, you're a jackass. Shut up. Like you're actual trash. Like you're human waste. Like that kind
Yeah,
of stuff.
yeah.
Like especially back in the day, man. Like I do not. I'm not. That's not cool with me. So it's like there's been a lot of situations where I've been like under a lot of pressure. You know, a lot of heat. Even like the flag football scenario. Like there's one scenario when we went to a big tournament in Charlotte, and they threw me into a position that I was inexperienced with, and I was on learning the ropes of it, and it was under immense pressure performing it. Like these are the greatest teams these guys play for the
Yeah.
you know
So you're
American
already
team,
kind of in this like really like
right?
ugh, like
And the worst part about it was like the there was the guy that was the captain of the defense, and somebody you know peed in his cereal because he was on me all day long. And you know
yeah.
these guys don't know how to coach or teach or learn, right? So they're just going to beat the crap out of you constantly because they think that's going to help you improve. And so I just basically took nonstop verbal abuse all day long. And it's like, it's not fun, but that's like, it's whatever. I ignore it. I know that the guy is intending well. I know that I'm going to figure it out, and I did figure it out. We did very well, and we've won a bunch of rings from it eventually. But
Sure, sure.
like I've got my own
You
process.
you established that you have a tolerance
Yeah,
to
it's like whatever. You're an idiot. You don't know how to teach or coach or lead or anything. You think you're helping. I appreciate it. You know, it's whatever. You're a decent enough guy. You know, and so it doesn't really bother me, but it does bother me when it happens to other people because not everybody has that same level of tolerance, and not everybody has the same level of understanding. And so like people deserve, and it's also tough too. And I think like the recent like tweet thing, like there's definitely some members in the community who, you know, said some things that they shouldn't have, and that's kind of why I made the tweet. But I also wanted to make sure that some people were like, why didn't you call out Samito for that? And I'm like, bro, Samito's my friend. He's a really smart guy. He's a good guy. I don't think he thinks sometimes when he says things, but I'm not going to like publicly lambast Samito out. Like I messaged him directly. I was like, hey, this is what I posted. Like, you know, this isn't necessarily targeted at you and whatever. And we had a really nice conversation. And then he posted an apology afterwards. I don't know if I had anything to do with that, but like, I don't know. To me, it's like, you know, I'm friends with Samito. So, but I also want to make a public stance, and that's a tricky balance to have, but it is what it is. I'm not going to throw people under the bus.
that seems to be like a recurring theme for you. It's like a balance between friendship and public persona recently.
Yeah, for sure. I try to set a good example, but obviously, you know, nobody's perfect. So, you know, trying to set a good example, and I got into a Twitter beef actually a few days ago.
Really?
Yeah, somebody called out SVB for some tweet he said about like, oh, some of the players are going to go to Marvel Rivals and be toxic there too. Wasn't even really calling anybody out, and somebody just lambasted him. Turned out it was somebody that who was involved with the 66 workshop code. So I was like coming to SVB's defense. It's like, dude, what are you talking about? Like I clown gift him, you know, and then it's like, oh. So I deleted the tweet. It's like, I don't want to get in a drama with anybody. And I messaged him directly. I was like, listen, I'm stand by what I said, but like, you know, I'm not going to, somebody that I'm working with, I'm not going to get into public beef with you. It's just kind of silly. But, you know, a lot of it is over social media. A lot of stuff is lost over context, is lost over that. But at the same time, it's like, I try to set a good example.
At times it's difficult to figure out what kind of archetype or animal you are or whatever you are. Because
you want to talk
like,
about hard? You want to talk about a difficult example? Bro, the freaking Saudi Arabia thing with the EWC,
Oh
I'm
yeah.
not joking. I spent hours thinking about what my stance or what my response should be to that. Like what
And where
makes the
did that
most
come from?
sense.
Was it that come from a personal moral thing, or did it go
Both.
back
Well,
again to
because
the defending?
it's very important for me personally to have the right stance. I know the uncoachable guys like Christopher and Commander X, friends of mine, right? They're very like counterculture. They don't really they believe things or they do things and they just don't really care about the response, which is great. Like I think you should stand by what you say, but for me it's less about I'm concerned about public opinion. I'm more concerned about like because my opinion is going to be reflected in the public, then I need to make really sure that it's the right one, right?
Because
It's
yeah, I see what you're saying. You've
it's
seen basically
amplified.
that, yeah, the shit that you say or things that you
Yeah.
talk about.
Yeah. Because, like, you think about the SVB tweet, right? Me responding with a clown gift to that guy, right?
Yeah.
I don't like that in the moment. I'm like, yo, this guy is being terribly rude and ugly and misconstruing things. But then, given the information that this is somebody that I've worked with before and did help me out with some stuff, it isn't bad taste for me to just start dunking on him, right?
Well, yeah.
So,
Now you have this odd responsibility that's sort of esoteric, where like if you
right,
post something that's even if let's say you have somebody being an ass, and then you're like justly sort of defending that person, but you're a bit of an ass too. Now
right,
your consciousness is sort of is like extended into
right.
like you have to think about that now.
Right, right. And same thing like why would I not call out Samito publicly? Not to
Yeah.
his face. Because it's first off, it's not just about Samito, obviously, but also because he's a friend of mine. I'm gonna make a stance that I don't agree with his stance, then I'll talk to him in private or message him privately and we'll talk. But like that's not it's hard when you have, especially when it's two public figures, like minor celebrities. But you know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's hard.
Right. Well,
But yeah, doing
it's
the
a
right
big
thing is important. Doing the right thing for is important. Even if people don't agree with me, if I can, with full conscience, think that I thought things through as best as I possibly can, because people are still disagreeing with the thing that I did with EWC, which was like donating to ALQSD, the whatever. Like people were still saying like, oh, that's not good. You shouldn't have done it, or it's fine. It doesn't matter, or it's irrelevant. Your attempts are worthless. Like I don't care. I thought about it. That feels right for me. I'm gonna stick with it. But I have to make sure that I'm confident on those kind of stances.
Do you ever feel anxious about your standing when it comes to like your community or the community?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I do. Really do.
Is there
Same
something
kind of thing.
recently that kind of was like,
I mean,
is it
EWC
always
thing for sure?
Yeah, yeah. So tell me a little bit more about like like you said there's anxiety within there. So what are you worried about?
I'm worried that. So I think the thing that hurts me the most is having being attributed with either poor intentions or not caring about something. Or like that's very important to me, as a Christian, but also as a member of the community trying to set a good example. Like I really try to do the right thing whenever I possibly can. That's very important to me. So when people
yeah, okay.
when people misattribute some action as, oh, that was dumb or that was insulting or that was rude, then that bothers me more than any other thing. There was a period of time, and this is again, just very important. Before I was even a public figure, when I was coaching Phase 2, way back, 2019, there was a period of time when there was like some roster drama going on. And I was a pretty inexperienced team coach at the time. I was trying to leverage too much hands-on stuff with basically a volunteer team. Like I wasn't being paid for this. None of these players are paid. It was just an unsigned team. Long story short, I made some roster decisions and I communicated as best I possibly can. I tried to do the right thing. But I specifically remember A10, if you ever see this, mate. A10 came up to me and felt like he'd been lied to. And that really cut me deep. Like that really, really bothered me. And I had to talk with him and figure it out. And I brought the whole team together. And it was an extremely uncomfortable situation because the worst thing that anybody could say to me was not that I was a bad coach, but that I'd been dishonest.
Yeah. Because
I didn't mean to.
What you is everything that you identify with, you try to represent.
Right. And some people have said that, like, I'm too soft as a team coach, and not necessarily in terms of like how I coach, because I'm fairly direct, right? But like in terms of the roster decisions, but like I would rather be called like that's more important to me. That's more important to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It sounds like kind of the same thing that I've heard from you before, where it's like it's sort of your ability to you have a very strong ethical seems like you have a very strong ethical direction that you like to that you pursue and you try towards it, and whenever like what hurts you the most is the sacrifices or any types of misperceived slights to that, or any types of failures of that representation. Where it's
that really bothers me. That really bothers me.
Yeah.
You can disagree with me in game strategy all you want. You can disagree with me in hero design opinions all you want, but if you try to misattribute my intentions, and the thing is like, the hard part is knowing that you and I both know I'm not perfect with that. It's impossible to be, right? Like I'm going to do something slightly out of selfish means, or like I'm gonna make a video with this because I think it's gonna make good content, not really thinking like you can't think every step through. So somebody's gonna be able to point their finger and say, look at that, he's not, and that, unfortunately, that's just how it is. But it still hurts, it's still frustrating, but it is what it is.
So how has it been now? Since last time I talked to you, had been, well, not last time I talked to you, but last time I interviewed you. Yeah.
I don't even remember when that was. Is that like 6 months ago, 7 months ago, 8 months ago? I don't even remember. It's been a while.
Close to a year ago. Isn't it your birthday soon? Because I think it was around your birthday last time.
Okay, then a year ago. Almost 8 days from now. So it's been good.
So it's been a year more of streaming, more of content creation, stuff like that. You've done this rebranding stuff. Yeah. You want to talk a little bit about like your thoughts behind everything that's gone on this last time, the Overwatch CS, the changes, all these different things.
Biggest change has been, like, I guess, being more of a team now. I think with Ryan and Poopkip, being kind of involved with the project managing and the editing. You've definitely
upgraded your team and your brand a lot.
Yeah,
you've also become a huge part of the. You've also become, like, I would say, it appears to me that you've become a much more notable member of the community. Like, you're a lot more recognized from what I perceive.
Slow and smooth. Yeah, I think, like, I don't know how well known I am, but I'd like to think I'm relatively well respected, because I try to put the work into making sure whatever I do is as good as I possibly can. But I'd say so.
Mm-hmm. Like, you have, like, Blizzard members in your chat and stuff like that now.
Yeah, I mean, going to LA was a big. I mean, I remember getting the message from Megan and being invited into the Discord, and then being invited to the meetup, and then, being able to give feedback in person. Like, I prepped really hard for that. Like, I took notes. I had a priority list because I wasn't sure how much time I had, and so I took every opportunity I could to talk with them and just to get to know them a little bit better. Because I think, like, that's another thing as well, is, like, I'm relatively empathetic to their position. I can be very frustrated about some of the decisions that have been made in the past. And, I think that's just part of the nature of criticism, is nobody's perfect, myself included. But I think for me, it's like being in a position of criticism before, especially working in contenders in Overwatch League, a lot of unfair criticism, a lot of fair criticism, but done from a really malicious way. It hurts, and you can try to avoid it, but it still cuts deep and it can be demotivating. So I think, like, being in that position before, not just as a content creator, but as like a coach, like as a leader, those criticisms are a lot. It's very easy to poo-poo the stuff, people making fun of my hair, or like, this guy is an idiot. Junkrat's the highest skilled character in the game. That's so easy but when people are, like, actively criticizing the decisions of, like, what you're doing for work, of, like, this and that, it's like, it gets a lot harder. And so, like, I've been there before to a much lesser degree. And so gave me a sense of empathy. And there's been various run-ins. Like, I got to hang out a lot with Gavin when we were playing board games in LA. We were doing like Mafia and stuff. And I got to talk with Ryan. I got to talk with Alec a lot. You're the expert at those games, dude. I love the games, man. Yeah. I love strategy. I love competition. I'm a good loser, but I just love competition. And even stuff like Kyle. So Kyle is the guy who does a lot of their senior art animator guy, and I actually coached him about a year and a half ago. We did a VOD review, and it was a lot of fun. So it just happenstance. You're in the community long enough, crap happens. You just meet people and so on. So.
That's always been something that's kind of interesting to me. I think we've probably talked about it before. I'm not terribly curious about it, but it always is interesting to me that you are, you're like a gamer. You play Overwatch. It's like, and you love games.
I just love sports. I love competing.
And you love sports, and you love and all that kind of stuff. And it just isn't, like, at face value, when people see you, they see, like, oh, this is kind of like, the muscle dude, kind of like martial arts coach sort of dude. It's just not quite like, you're not quite the guy that I think people normally would associate with that kind of thing.
I just love competing. I always, whenever my wife calls me a gamer, she's over there, I always cringe, because I'm like, dude, I'm not a gamer. I play less video games than like the average dude that you work with at the jujitsu school.
Was she into games before she met you?
No, she'd never like she'd played like some I Spy computer game back when she was a kid.
I Spy
And
computer game. Holy.
yeah. And maybe she'd played a board game here and there, but no, I got her into board games. She got me into jujitsu.
How'd you get her into Overwatch and stuff like that?
I remember. So her brother got me into Overwatch because I was
Oh.
all into like the combo high school characters, and he's like, "Yo, you got to play Genji, like Genji's high school character." I'm like, "All right, I'll give it a shot." Loved it. And then I remember I might have been playing Overwatch for a year and a half at that point, and we're flying back, and we've always done stuff together. Like we've always made sacrifices. I moved to New Hampshire for her to do her Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu thing. She moved back here for me for sports and closer to my family. And so we're flying back from visiting my family, I think. Yeah. Yeah, stop. And she's blowing kisses at me. I'm irresistible. Anyway, long story short, she was like, I'm just going to play Overwatch. I'm like, what? She's like, I just want to do it. I'll play Overwatch. I'll get into it. And I was like, all right. So this is the funniest thing ever. I still, it makes me so happy thinking back to it. She would sit in the practice range with Widowmaker and the top rungs, like on one of the things. And I'm not joking, an hour, I'd be reading a book and just shoot the bot, shoot the bots, shoot the bots, just for hours. And this happened for like a week, And eventually she got into game versus AI. And then I had an alt account that I gave her, and then she used it and played it. And
Oh my God.
it was a blast. I thought she was going to be like, Reinhardt or Reaper or Roadhog. Nope. She tried them, but it was Widowmaker immediately. And
Yeah, I
nothing
wonder
about
what she liked
Widowmaker
about
would make an
Whitaker.
Ash. She just likes sniping people. She just liked
Yeah, I know.
shooting people in the head.
It's the alternate history where she like became
Yeah.
like a Spec Ops, like a
Yeah.
Army Ranger or
Yeah.
something.
Some
She's
hidden
living that out in
superiority
Overwatch.
complex, I think,
Yeah. Oh, that's
Maybe not
good.
hidden.
She's like leveling up, killing rats essentially
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
RPG, just
Yeah,
killing bots
yeah.
and the little thing. That's so
Yeah,
good.
that was it. It was super funny.
One thing I was wondering about for because so about the games and stuff like that, I wasn't too worried. I wasn't too curious about that because I know we've talked about it before, and it is a bit peculiar, but it does make sense for your competitive spirit. We talked about your backstory with like since a kid, that's kind of been like that's just been something that you strive for. You strive kind of for excellence in all the things that you do. I think it's reflected in your in your childhood. It's reflected from your parents, like you said, your dad. And even reflected as in the principles of like your religion.
Right.
But so in the last year, has there been anything that stood out to you as like any achievements that you felt particularly happy with or proud of?
I mean, I feel like I've continued to improve my coaching when and where I can. I've continued to improve my understanding of the game.
I saw you were doing like live coaching in some of your like.
Yeah,
I don't know if I haven't checked in a bit, but I saw that you were
Yeah.
doing like much more frequently. You were coaching for a bit, then you did some live coaching, and then looked at that.
Yeah, so especially for repeat sessions, or if I get into a session and I feel like we've pretty much hammered on the points, pretty much it's just going to be a repetitive review. I'm like, all right, let's just pull the plug, let's go in and practice it, right? But it's just some of the concepts, right? Like, the clock or the Kevster principle or target priority doesn't matter, or resource efficiency. I've even leveled up my Doomfist Lucio coaching recently with a lot of like, I had a lot of questions about like, you keep saying that you should be setting up angles for backline, but all these Doomfist players are saying you should just shoot tank. Like, what's the deal? And so I had to sit there and analyze a lot of Doomfist and think about it, and I end up kind of solving the system, right? And there's a similar with Lucio as well, like how to position as Lucio. And it took a lot of work, but I feel like I've made progress with not just like understanding the game better, but trying to simplify it, right? Like always trying to like reevaluate and simplify, clean up my systems, and I feel like I've done a better job of that. So
yeah, I'm thinking on one hand, it sounds like throughout your life, a competitive drive has been like we just talked about. Competitive drive has been the thing that's behind you, but now it's sort of like, what if it's like that you are like obsessed with learning shit?
Oh, really?
I think that might be your thing. I think you might be obsessed with learning shit, and competition is just a medium in which you can measure.
You might be right. I mean, I love learning stuff. Like I read so many books. I learn so many different topics. I feel like I'm always trying to like improve my process, but it isn't just the goal of being the best at what I do, but I just like learning new things.
Yeah. I think if you think about what makes games, a lot of it is just like you can learn the thing.
Right, exactly. I just find it very fascinating. One will get in, like even like the board game thing, it's just, it is fun to learn something new or a new skill or a new talent. And I think like if you go back and think about like the last 10 years of my life, there's been a lot of phases of like, this was your martial arts phase, this is your flag football phase, this is where we did a lot of board games, this is where you even spent more time with music, this is spent more time with coaching, this is spent more time with Overwatch League coaching or content, or this is more game theory, more hero design, right? Like I really enjoy learning, and there's not many things that I would consider myself to be the best at. I would like to think that I'm the best at one-on-one coaching within the Overwatch community, and maybe macro understanding. I put a lot of work into that. And ironically, I'm still probably, if I wanted to be, could be the best Lord of the Rings online Warg player. But there aren't many things that I'm like the best at, but there are a lot of things that I'm pretty good at. And I think that almost brings me just as much joy as achieving the best.
Yeah. Interesting. Because, you sort of like go from thing to thing. It seems like you have this ability to go to any different thing, pick it up, learn massively at a high pace, figure it out. And then even you could probably teach anything.
Yeah, I mean, the principles are the same. I think that was my biggest advantage getting into Overwatch coaching, is that all these other guys, at least initially, understood the game better than I did. They'd been playing video games as first-person shooters, and I had never done anything like that. I mean, I started coaching in like season 2 of Overwatch League. It was way too late to get into that, much to my chagrin. It was a hard path, but my diverse background just gave me so much of an advantage, So I think like that still is my advantage now. I learn more about coaching from books that have nothing to do about even coaching half the time. Just principles and obsessive note-taking and a lot of thinking.
Yeah.
In the bathtub or in the shower.
When do you think? Yeah.
Shower.
The bathtub or the shower?
Shower or walk. We always joke, we'll go for a walk. We gotta go for about a walk, like what, once or twice a day? Most of the time we're talking or I'm listening. Nothing? Never mind. Nothing. And then about, I don't know, like 20, 30% of the time, I'll just be like, hey, I just need to think. And she knows, we'll just walk 15, 20, 30 minutes even, and just silence, and I'm just thinking things through, and I'm literally, I could be thinking about anything. Like I remember one of the recent ones is I was thinking about 6v6, and I was thinking about the theory of why it works and why people like it and why it doesn't work, or why it could work and what we could do differently. And I came up with a lot of ideas. I have a project right now that I thought of in the bathtub 2 nights ago, that about feedback and about how patch notes could be delivered better, and then also about how we can improve our perception of Overwatch. And that's just, I read a book, I sit there and I think about how I could apply it to Overwatch, and then I kind of run with it. So
it sounds to me like in your brain throughout the average day, you kind of have a lot of thoughts that bounce around and sort of like bubble, almost like it's like it's bubbling. Yep. But it doesn't quite go anywhere until you find your specific moments in which those things can kind of channel through.
Yeah, I mean,
so
it was
like
the
a walk or the bath. Or maybe even do you think in bed at night, or do you fall asleep?
a little too much, but yeah, I try to give myself some time to think outside of bed, because otherwise I have a hard time. Actually, falling asleep is usually not too bad, but then I'll wake up at 5 a.m. and I'm just like, sometimes I don't even know I'm thinking. I'll just wake up and my brain. I was joking with Beth 2 days ago. I woke up about 5 o'clock in the morning. And I haven't played tackle football in 12 years. And I was thinking that I should be playing more press coverage as a defensive back. And because of my height disadvantage, I'm only 5'9", 5'8". So like a lot of the receivers I was playing would be like 6'1". But I was stronger than they were. So I was often giving them more space because I had speed, but I think I could still, and it's like, why? I don't even realize I'm thinking this. I'm never going to get any value out of this again, but I solved it,
Yeah.
It's just
so
dumb.
that's one thing is sort of like the psychological idea of bringing something to fruition that had been unsolved before, right? People don't like unfinished puzzles and that kind of thing.
Yes, exactly.
There was like a study they did once where they took people, and the ultimate way that they frustrated people was that they would give them puzzles to solve, and the harder the puzzle and the longer time that they spent trying to solve the puzzle, eventually at a certain point, people just started coming up with their own solutions, or just melting. They would just melt down. And there's like a theory behind like schizophrenia is like it's like a disorder. And one of the theories is that it basically presents your mind with an unsolvable puzzle of like, I'm hearing these external stimuli and stuff like that. My brain can't figure out a reason for it. And eventually it just can't stand not having like a solid reason for it. So it's just like, what, the government's doing this. It's got to be or something like that.
Interesting. It creates an identity or a reason for its existence, essentially.
Yeah.
Interesting.
In Overwatch terms, right? I used to say this about like in the early like people talking about bringing back 6v6 days. People would be so convicted, like 6v6 is the answer. This will solve the game, right? This is going to
Because it's
fix all of our
closure.
problems.
It's closure is
Yes,
what it is.
because
Yeah.
it feels a lot better to say that than like we're in this nebulous land of no answers and like we don't know what's going to be this. If you feel like you can be, especially if the answer's safe and kind of distant, right? It helped with 6v6. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it helped with 6v6 because it seemed like this thing that they would never do. So that's even better for people in those situations because it's like, here's this unattainable thing that I don't have to worry about because I can just put my faith into this thing that's never going to happen.
Right.
And then that kind of protects me from ever having to see the fruition of that. But
It's,
now
it's,
I have
it's
the
the
answer.
physical manifestation of heaven, essentially.
Yeah. But I have the answer now, and having the answer feels good.
Right.
People don't like not having the answer.
Right.
What was I saying before that? Because
we were talking about like my game theory thoughts and how I'm obsessed with learning things. And
oh no, you were talking about and then your dream. Not your dream, but you had woken up thinking through that. Yeah.
I think through all stuff. I actually a lot of my music career from the little albums and trillions of ideas that I've done I would say the matter of fact the most recent song that we released, I wrote the keyboard solo in the shower in my head. And I hummed it out loud on phone, and we just basically transposed it because like I will hear the melody and like and I can be like, what would happen? What would a keyboard do over this?
Mm-hmm,
what would the next chord be? And I could just kind of I just know. So like I write like the vast majority of like my music and a lot of my ideas kind of come separated from the actual item itself.
You said that this you woke up in the middle of the night and had that thought about flag football and the different position, or was it flag football?
It was tackle, but I mean, it was just football. It was just football. Yeah.
Right. And you said, that'll never be of use to me anymore. Like, but it's resolved now. Mm-hmm. Do you think that there's anything that's within that seems particularly relevant to what's going on in your life these days? That might have brought that.
I don't know if it's particularly relevant right now, but I do have a weakness for like I guess like you said, like a lot of people with unresolved problems. You know, I think football for me is kind of like been a bit of a disappointment for me because we did win the rings and do things like that, but I wasn't super happy with like the team environment that we were with. Very toxic, very it's just immature essentially is the way, because that whole environment is a rough field. There's a lot of people that don't know how to lead, don't know how to coach, don't know how to, I mean, we didn't even practice. And we were competing these like national tournaments, right? Versus the best in the world. And we didn't even practice. You know, these are just a bunch of really, really athletically gifted players. I mean, I played with NFL players, you know, like people, but we just show up and so that always bothers me. It's like, man, we could be doing so much better.
I'm suspicious of something here. I'm suspicious of something.
All right, leak it.
Yeah, because I like where you're going with that, because I think that brings up the relevance of this thought that woke you up. But okay, so in the thought that woke you up too, you said that you realized you had been playing some, like, break it down for me. You were playing a wrong position.
Yeah, it's not even really a position I play anymore. It's just it was just a thought about like, what if I was put in that scenario, would I perform? And it's just generally the sport that I love but has not been fully resolved. I don't feel like it would be like the equivalent of like if I had never gotten to Overwatch League, or actually even if I did, even the way that the London Spitfire last season kind of ended for me, kind of on a nah.
If you had to break down the sentiment behind that feeling or that thought, what's the most simple way that you could break down what was going on? Going on beneath that.
So maybe not super relevant to this one specific instance, but it is definitely a problem. A sense of injustice affecting an outcome, I think.
Yeah.
It really bothered me a lot when I was in middle school, especially because I got kind of screwed over by my coaches. Like I'm sure a lot of kids didn't. And I was always like a really hard worker, and I was like really, and I remember I didn't make the first string all-star team for the middle school and the region, right? And I should have. And basically what ended up happening is like I had one of these like ego moments, like arrogant moments when one of the players was sick and they asked me to join the all-star, you know, because one of the players couldn't make it. And I was like very much like, I mean, I obviously took it, but as like a 12-year-old kid, I was like, man, why didn't this come first off, right? And I played well and we won and we did really good, but it was kind of like, I felt like, oh man, there's like wasted potential there, you know, and I hated that so much. And I felt like that a lot of times with a lot of different things, you know, like this whole flag football circumstance. Like if we had practiced, if the team culture had been a little bit less toxic. I love the sport, but I took a break this summer because I just was tired of the stress and the pressure from people that were just ruining my love for the sport, you know?
Right.
And then
So now
even the
picture
Overwatch League.
that specific emotion that you just described to me. Does that remind you of anything recently around the time that you woke up? That kind of like, is there anything that the first thing that comes to mind if you're trying to think of something that it might pull up?
Not recently, no. But I will say that it still can be unresolved. I think within, like I said, the Overwatch thing, the whole Overwatch League last season is still something that bothers me, right? I still have to think that through all the time, even though it was like a reasonable and, you know, not being there in person and, you know, but it still bothers me, you know, it still bothers me even to this day. And then even, I think we spoke about this last session, but like the whole unresolved high school, where the frick did all my friends go? Why did they all go off the deep end doing drugs and doing this? And like we talked about this in person and in Dallas, right? And why did they ghost me? What happened to them? Why are they all weird? And I'm never going to, like, just thinking like, yo, we're going to be old and this is still never going to be resolved. And like, that bothers me so much.
Yeah,
like I can't just like pretend that like we were never. I had this conversation with Pepper many times. Like I can't pretend that like this wasn't a thing. And so like it's like I said, it's unresolved potential from a sense of like injustice that just it grinds.
It's just like
my
sitting
gears.
there right outside your phobia or something right there.
Yeah. It's like, man, it bothers me. Really bothers me.
Yeah. You wish that you could resolve that somehow.
Exactly. And I've done it. I a few weeks ago, I messaged one of those friends who's really, you know, gone on some deep stuff. And I just like basically just unloaded a well-written, but like, you know, hey, I'm still here for you. I don't know what you're up to. Thinking about you all the time. Hope you're doing well. You know, I really appreciate, you know, and, you know, it's obviously no response there, but it is what it is. And I think that's just one of the things that hurts is like there isn't going to be any resolution there, no matter really what happens. And so you just kind of have to personally come to terms. But that's something that I have improved at, but it's deadlifting 1,000 pounds.
It's the unresolved puzzle, man. It's those guys in that lab room I was telling you about. They just eventually they make up their own fucking shit.
I guess so. I mean, that you find yourself doing that, right? You find yourself going that like, you know, maybe, you know, I don't know. You never really do come up with a satisfying answer, and it bothers you sometimes. So,
what about dreams? Do you dream?
Vividly, constantly.
Vividly.
Yes.
Well, tell me about a dream that you remember recently.
I mean, I had a dream last night. My wife's grandmother was dying, and we went to see her in hospice, and then there was cats and a raccoon. I had to take care of him, and it was a kitten. But I usually dream very intense stuff, super emotionally intense stuff. What? What was your dream again?
I was teaching this little girl takedowns and she succeeded. And then everybody started happy birthday and brought me cake.
Yeah, so that's dream stuff like she succeeds in takedowns and people bring a birthday cake and stuff to children.
Breaking the arms of girls that are
Or she's breaking the arms of girls that are flirting with me. Yes, that's the other one. But mine are like super emotionally intense, either like these dramatic battle war scenes where I have to go to war to defend something, or like these super drama-esque like Oppenheimer kind of stuff, like political crazy stuff. It's always something way over the top dramatic. And the worst part about it is, you know, for the next like 7 hours, I wake up and it's just like it's on my mind, man. Like it shapes my entire mood or how I feel. But
that's interesting. What do you think about the significance of dreams?
I think sometimes dreams just are dreams. I think sometimes I definitely like I'll dream something that's like it's total nonsensical, doesn't mirror or match anything that's been on my mind or even how I've been feeling. Yeah, just totally random. But I do feel like a lot of dreams do mirror, echo, at least the intensity of how I've been feeling. Maybe not what I've been thinking about, but how I've been feeling recently. And I generally feel pretty intensely about stuff, or think intensely, or try to do so. It reflects. And I'm a big fantasy guy, right? I don't read a lot of fantasy books, but I do really enjoy the ones that I do read. And so the concept of like bigger and better and interesting and new and unexplored worlds, and like that's always been something that's excited me even as a kid. And so that definitely reflects in kind of what I think about and what I do. And
So like the significance of the dream you had last night, if you apply your perspective on the significance of dreams, is that dream significant?
No, not that one particularly, but just a few nights ago there was tornadoes and there was me saving a couple of kids, and there was a war that happened right after that, and then there was this big dramatic thing where I had to save somebody that I cared for, and like that kind of stuff. You know, that always
That's so
is
interesting.
generally.
It just reminds me of the thing we were talking about earlier. You have to save people. You got to save the children. You got to watch out for the dangers of the tornadoes. You got to defend people in the war.
I regularly, I'd say at least once a month, wake up in tears. So I know people joke that like on stream, but I am actually a very emotional person. Very emotionally affected by stuff, you know. So
it was just like we were talking right at the beginning. You told me about the difference for you between you feel as though you experience quite intense emotions, and you've kind of always known that about yourself. And for you, it's been kind of sort of a challenge to temper that and find an ethical strategy to channel that.
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean that, but that still comes with like the emotions are still strong, even though you might not present them.
Yeah.
And
I used to get into I never really got into fights growing up as a kid, like somebody else in this call I know. But I have memories in high school football where like I would go into a different mind state once I walked in the field, like not even joking. Like I remember threatening my teammates when I was 12 years old if they didn't start trying harder. Like they were not trying up to my standards.
Do you remember who it was?
No, there's multiple teammates, right? They're just I don't even know who they were. I don't remember their names, but I was like, dude, next practice, if we do a tackling drill, I'm gonna knock your helmet off. I'm going if you don't start trying right now, like I'm giving it everything I've got, and you better match that effort, or I'm going to hurt you. And I remember there was one game in high school where, again, a sense of justice, right? Like I never played dirty, never did, and always above the belt. And one kid. I was running the ball and he poked me in the eye on purpose. He put his hand inside my face mask and poked me in the eye. Well, I mean, I go up to my coach in the sideline and I'm like, Coach, give me the ball. Like I want the ball 3 or 4 times in a row. So my coach obliges and I come up, I go at this guy. Like I'm running through the hole and I'm running directly at the enemy. At this point, I don't even care who they are. I'm purposely I'm hitting them over and over and I'm spitting venom as I'm walking back to the sideline. I ended up getting a warning from the referee. It was like, you got to cut this out. Cause I'm like, at that point, it was like my sense of justice. Okay, you're done. You're dead to me. Like you were done. Like I'm going to physically harm you. You know, I think like that's kind of like where I'd like to think I've changed a little bit there, but, and I do think like it's not so much as it's definitely not a suppression. I've learned to process things a lot better, and I've learned to channel that intensity.
I really appreciate the idea that you have behind like having a dedicated time for processing thoughts, like either through walks, through baths, and stuff like that. So that doesn't ideally wake you up in the middle of the night. But it seems like for you, there are a very large amount of thoughts that are constantly bouncing around.
That's the problem. That's the problem. It's always like, you know, sometimes if I were to say, the next 3 or 4 hours, I'm going to dedicate thoughts to everything that I need to put thinking to. I mean, it would take 3 or 4 hours. And
has it always been that way, or has it gotten worse?
It's gotten a lot worse and better. I guess it depends on like what way you want to look at it, because it's like there are just more avenues to think, I guess, right now. Like I am very lucky enough to like my job a lot. So that's like normally you like go home from work and there's nothing to think about. But like as soon as I stop from work, that's when the thinking starts, right? So whether it's the coaching or the content, whether it's, you know, anything, like there's so many things to think about right now. And I also feel like right now I have my finger in a lot of pies right now. I mean, I the other night when I was thinking in the bath, I wasn't thinking about my content or game design. I was thinking about like what could Overwatch do to better present its product, to have it better received by the community. Because after the tweet, that was pertinent, right? So I'm thinking of like, how am I going to save Overwatch? How am I going to make it better perceived? You know? And I think like that was the mission of the hour. And sometimes there's a lot of those little missions that end up coming up, I think.
Yeah. Would you say that now you're more busy than you've ever been?
Yes and no. I would say since the last time I've had this conversation, about the same, a little bit different busy, and I'd like to be a little bit less busy. But yeah, I would say about the same since I've started content, honestly, about the same.
You'd like to be less busy.
A little bit less busy. I think it's healthier for me. I think it's like I do tread the waters of burnout. Right. And that's, again, something shockingly that I do know a lot about. I've studied a lot on burnout, ironically.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think like all the trademarks of burnout, like not being rewarded for your time, not good leadership, being frustrated by the result and so on. There's really none of those. It's just the quantity. It's just the quantity for me.
What's the most burnt out you've ever felt in this last year or two?
There's a period of time when I was doing like a video a day, doing all the editing myself, coaching like 2 or 3 sessions every single day, answering messages. It wasn't like long hours every day, but it was very intense hours every day. So It was like, from like 8 to 10, 8 to 11 hours a day, 6 days a week, so it's like, it's a lot, and it added up, and it like required me to be on at all times because I'm either streaming or coaching or whatever. And so like, that was pretty exhausting.
Yeah. Well, I'll save the dream analysis for another time, since I know that's something that I love to do as I'm a therapist. I'll put this as a disclaimer to you that like I don't believe that dreams have like some sort of symbolic value in terms of like there's a book that can tell you what each thing in a dream means. But what I do believe is associative value. I believe that dreams are like a massive, massive goldmine to what's going on inside your brain and what needs to be resolved. And I think the dreams that you have are all significant. I don't think there's any such thing as, if you had random dreams, like random is a scary concept. Random is like, if you were having random dreams, you'd just be seeing like flying crates and like straight, like it wouldn't make any sense, right? There's a reason that your brain is showing you whatever it's showing you, or trying to process or do whatever it's trying to do.
Right.
But whatever that is not really something that we can know. But what is good is like the associative content, and so it's something that you could probably do if your wife is dreaming too. Like that's a fun conversation to be having. Is like, why do you think you were having? What do you think is the significance of this dream? Like, what did the cat like when you think of those cats? Like, why do you think there were cats in that dream? Or like, why were you rescuing the children? What is that about?
Yeah.
Like, did those children remind you of anybody? And those are the kind of questions that you ask, and when you do, you start coming down to like what the dream is actually meaning to you. It's kind of like what I was saying with you woke up and you had that thought of about the injustices of your past, but at the surface level, it's just like I had this weird dream about how like I could have been more efficient 12 years ago and it's useless now. But it's like, is it useless now, or is it saying something about what's going on right now?
I think for me, it's a lot of it is it's like, maybe not all of the dreams, but a lot of them are things that I'm aware of, like that tension. I'm aware of that's often on my mind, so
your brain is petitioning. It's petitioning you. It's like, please figure this out, solve this puzzle, so I don't have to keep coming up with like whatever. I'm under duress.
And some of it's just like, I just feel intensely about stuff, I don't think there's a whole lot to it. Just, I like big things. I like intense things. I like having a purpose and serving something. And, my wife always jokes that like there was a period I remember one time we were staying on the beach, and she was like, she didn't want me to go out the beach at night with my brother, because she's like, if your brother gets caught in a riptide, you're gonna die trying to save him. And it's like I did like, if there's something that has to be done, like I'm gonna do it. Like it has to, somebody's gotta do it. It's like a little bit of melodramatic attitude maybe, but I've kind of always I've seen myself. Maybe it's just like being the oldest, but I love that kind of stuff. Like I like feeling like I'm helping and doing something worthwhile.
Are you spending as much time thinking as you think you should?
No. I think that's maybe part of the.
What gets in the way?
I mean, the things that I'm thinking about, right? Because think about something, and then you got to take some action and do it. But obviously, then you have to take time and reevaluate. I was talking with PK today, right? Yeah, I was talking with, and I was like, hey, he was like, we need to think, we'll go back and evaluate like the previous video projects from the last few weeks every so often. And I was like, yeah, sure. It's like, but then something else has to go, because like right now I'm already so slammed as it is. So it's like, it's a lot of like trying to find when and where my time can be most efficiently spent, and without, because again, the problem is not just the quantity. It's like almost everything that I do without exception requires a lot of thinking. Even writing out video descriptions and making my own thumbnails occasionally, or answering messages. It's like I'm kind of in the moment. There is no like brain dead work. And I think that's why a lot of the mental stress for me is a problem, is because when I was doing even things like tree service back when we first got married, it's like it was hard work, but you had a lot of time to think, and or there wasn't a lot to think about in terms of work. Honey, how was work? I don't know. We threw some stuff in the chipper, that's pretty much all there is to it, right? So now it's like everything that I do is an additional step to process or think through later on, not to mention new ideas I want.
Especially if you want to be you, because like I think a lot of people can do what you do without putting that level of thought, but you have a different standard for how you want to execute.
Right.
It's very important to you.
Right.
You want,
exactly.
like you were talking earlier about the perception that you would like to put forward, and what really would bother you is if people misperceived you as something that you weren't.
And I try to prepare for everything that I do too, right? Like that's something that me and PK are always like, he's always pushing me to do better. And it lines up with what I want to do, is like, whether it's the interview with Alec or the Group Up podcasts, or even like going into like this whole like stupid time spent video we're cooking right now, which is like, how much time do you spend? Like we have spent like, I mean, I've spent like 3 hours on that after I recorded it, like going through the graphic and cleaning it up and reevaluating the things. And we jumped into a 15-minute call. And so like we're pushing each other to be better, but it does take like, it is the level of quality is like set at a higher standard, which definitely is, you know, a good and a bad thing. It's because right now the problem is the quality is high, but the quantity is also pretty high with pretty much everything that I do. And the frustrating thing is that there are so many things that I want to do. Like, I mean, you should see our workshop list. There's literally, I think, 60 or 70 different video or content ideas that we have.
Well, I think that's kind of always been something that's kind of plagued you, is how much you seem like somebody who, it's like, life is too short because there's so many things I need to do. Like there's so many things I would love to do. I'd love to learn how to like fish while blindfolded or something. I don't know.
Yeah. There's a lot of interests. I wish.
And everything that you do is kind of like, it can be even painstaking, I would suspect, because it's sort of a sacrifice of not doing. It's like the cost of not being able to do something else.
And I think that's kind of where I'm at right now. Is it's like it's I don't mind not being the best at X or Y or Z. It's because I like my job, and because it is my job, I feel a sense of drive and responsibility to be the best at what I'm doing. I know I'm never going to be the best YouTuber. I'm never going to be the best streamer, but I do have a drive to be a little bit better than I am right now. And certainly with coaching and game design and hero design, like that stuff, I have more motivation to be really good. And so, you know, just being okay isn't good enough for me. Really, you know?
And you'll certainly never be the best woodworker or the best like Lowe's employee or whatever. Like,
no.
Or do you have Lowe's over there?
Yeah.
Okay,
Lowe's are great.
Nailed it.
Lowe's are great. Literally nailed it. Yeah.
But I had like 2 more questions for you, I think.
Yeah, sure.
I'm trying to remember what they were. I think one of them was, so one of them comes to like, okay, so you went to a big event as celebrity Spilo man, minor celebrity Spilo man.
Dallas?
Yeah, you've done it twice now, but you went to Dallas. Yeah. What was the whole experience like for you, with people coming up taking photos of you, and
great.
People, you have the stream booth there and stuff like that?
I love it. Yeah, I think the reason why I love it so much is the conversations that I have with people, because this is why that literally every single time there's any risk of burnout, which is ironic because it often is married to these big stressful events. Because Dallas is great. I coach up till the day we leave. The travel day was very stressful. I get back the next day, I'm coaching and streaming full out, right? And I'm like exhausted, right? But it feels great to see people and be like, yo, thank you so much. I had conversations about people like I'd help fix their sleep schedule. I'd repair. Dude, some guy was like, I helped repair his relationship with his parents from watching one of my videos, And like you get that kind of stuff. I had a long conversation with this one father of a kid who's like this kid, I say he's like 19, 20. He's involved in the Overwatch scene, and about how he's really involved in his videos, and like it's helped motivate him to take like his schedule more seriously. And we sat there and talked for like, it might have been half an hour. He got my phone number, like we were texting, me and the dad, and he just has zero filter, like most old people. Like he's like old people, he's like 50, but he's like, let me get your phone number. I'm gonna text you. I'm gonna get you involved, man. I really appreciate. And it's just like, I just love that stuff. That makes me so thankful for what I'm doing, and like it's so.
That's what's meaningful to you.
Yeah, I mean, you got to know how that feels too, right? Like, and like it just feels so good to do that. It's literally the best thing ever. So it's fun to be able to sign autographs and see people and whatever. But the more important thing is to be like, yo, I actually helped somebody like this, and like that's to me is like, I'm never gonna be. Not, I hate to make this comparison, but I'm not going to say any names, but I'm never going to be a top streamer or a YouTuber or anything like that. I understand that's just how it is. That's okay with me. But it's because I'd rather prefer to do like what I'm doing. And like, I find a much more personal meaning out of that. And that's why those events are always so fun for me, because, it's not about the number of autographs. It's the conversations that you have. Yeah. And even when if I am busy doing stuff and I just have to sign an autograph, people are always going to say like, thank you so much. And like that like that's just the best. That's the best. It's not only an ego boost because like, hey, I'm a little mini celebrity in this little gaming corner, right? But it's like, dude, I helped somebody. Like that's like that. It's why I do this. It's why I did I think I really affirm that that's kind of what I want to be doing within the creative sphere, whether that's whatever. Once I started teaching martial arts, I think once I started teaching martial arts, do I ever need help? Yeah, I need help all the time. I'm a glass cannon.
Who helps? Who gets to help you? Because I'm like, you're always
Pepper's like I literally could not function
licensed
without
help
her.
operative.
Literally could not, and really honestly PK as well. Like PK and Ryan, like huge help. Yeah. Like I would not be able to do what I'm doing without them. Like no hyperbole. And
I think I interrupted you saying something. I can't remember what it was.
No, but like it that stuff gives me immense meaning, and like that's actually a great tie-in there, is because that whole trip, Pepper did all that. That. Like she organized everything and got the help to get the houses and Lightwave's also, you know, the moderator. She helped me. So like I am very basically I've been allowed to specialize myself a little bit because of like a really strong support community that I have. And my wife who had started her own business, was working full time, doing her own jujitsu thing, and like, you know, has a business or bachelor's in marketing and all that kind of stuff. And now, you know, she's basically part-time jujitsu, full-time supporting me and everything that I do, bouncing ideas off of me, listening to me rant, supporting me, taking care of all the peripherals around here. And then people like Poop Kip, you know, who's putting in all the weight into not just like helping me, but also criticizing me, critiquing me, keeping me accountable. We don't always agree on things. I think he'd always push me to be a little bit more professional. And I'm always a little bit more like, I want to lean into the clean up, but keep it a little bit unhinged because that's just me. And then also Ryan too, right? Like the editing and like, I really rely on those guys because like I said, I'm a glass cannon. I work hard. I think hard. But I need people to help me support me to do that. I'm high maintenance. I'm high maintenance. Let's put it that way. Very high maintenance.
What would happen to you if you didn't have that support?
You know, I'd adjust. You know, people adjust, right? You'd adjust, but I wouldn't be able to do. It wouldn't be near as good because you asked me what would happen to me. You can actually go see what happened with me, right? Like you can go back earlier in some of my streaming and YouTube, and like, yeah, I improved, but it was slow. The content was just kind of like VODs. There wasn't a lot of creativity with how I applied myself. And I could even see it sometimes in how I, you know, coached professionally. Like when there were times when I had to have more responsibilities and had less flexibility. It's like, you know, it just wasn't as good of a product. You know, I wasn't able to help as many people as I am now. I wasn't as good at what I do as I am now. And so like, that was fine. That was the limitations of what I had, but there were limitations.
Do you feel satisfied or proud of where you are now?
Yeah, I do. I think like that's, you know, something we always continually talking about with Pepper is like, she's always like, you know, be careful about the burnout. And she's always cautioning because I do occasionally get a little frustrated at stuff, but
you're at a high risk of burnout, I would say, compared to most people that I've talked to.
For sure.
The people who are really expressive, very helpful towards others, really put their soul into everything. Yeah. They're the highest risk.
Well, we had to talk about this. Poop Kip, we had to have a message system. I don't know if you noticed, like a month ago, like I was answering messages like 4, 5, 6 hours every single week. And I've never ghosted anybody. And I because that had happened to me and I never wanted to happen to anybody else. But I eventually had to go to like a once a week answer message system essentially for non-urgent messages because of that. So, you know, for burnout for me is always, for the most part, has been, with a few exceptions like stupid messages or editing, has been mostly quantity. And so like kind of always pushing back on that has been like the key thing. But that's always hard.
Kind of a system for mitigating it recently? I heard you're taking a break soon, right? Or no, maybe?
Yep. Week after my birthday, actually. I actually just found out today that my wife had a trip planned for me. So we're going to visit some family, which will be fun. Nice. But yeah, for me, it's just like kind of managing it. And the hard part is always it's like 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 2 steps back in terms of quantity of what I'm doing. Because there's always new responsibilities, new things, and
interesting.
So on.
2 steps forward, 2 steps back.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Mm-hmm. And nobody ever says that.
That's where I'm at, right? It's good steps forward, and we are removing things that are fluff, right? Like things that like aren't that useful or taking time, like the message thing, right? Like that wasn't the most important thing for me to be doing at that time, and I'm replacing it with more preparation and prepping new ideas or streaming for an extra hour, you know. And that's good. It's good. But it is, I would like to get to a point where we're 2.5 steps back, at least for, a couple of steps. Like I'm at a point in time where I think like if I had to put like a random number on it, I'm like 15%, 10%, 15% less volume, and I'm probably in a pretty healthy state.
Nice. It's good that you kind of have the vision for that, because that can be very elusive.
Working towards it. I think the big thing is the 5 days a week. Is I need to get to 5 days a week.
Yeah, for sure. That sounds good to me.
Yeah.
All right. The last question I had was that
Sure.
I wondered if is there anything that's been on your mind, or anything that's been bothering you lately that we haven't talked about, or something that you're hoping that you could tell me?
Let me think. I think kind of what we just talked about there was pretty important, right? And when what we talked about at the start about being like an ethical example from when and where I am, but then also like managing that burnout has been really something that's been on my mind recently.
That's something there. It's sort of the puzzle that's sort of trying to come to fruition.
Because I love my job, I really do. I've learned, because it's not just I enjoy what I do, but I enjoy what it encourages me to do, which is to constantly learn, which we talked is something that I love. But
I think more so than competition, you are a learning man.
Yeah. I like learning and then testing it. I love competition, and I love like learning to compete better and so on. But long story short, it's like I want to make sure that like I hold myself to a higher standard in everything I do. I hold myself to a higher standard with my mental health, with my physical health. And so, there's the irony is that like, those things are sometimes at conflict, right? Not the mental and physical health, but the mental, physical health and what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Right. Because there is a lot of what I do. So I think like I want to, I could just kind of let my physical health go and my mental health go and then continue to excel even further than where I'm at right now.
Drink a few beers each night.
Yeah. Right. Like, but it's like, I can't do that. Like, I will not do that. Like, I know I've been there before and it's ugly, and my work quality also diminishes as well. And I think I'm aware that I'm a glass cannon. So I really try to take as good of a care of myself. And so there's a constant battle of like, am I doing that as well, as efficiently as I possibly can? And it is very hard. It is very hard, because it's a little bit like that delayed reinforcement we were talking about with Overwatch, right? Where like it feels wrong to not be working right now, or it feels wrong to not take on that project right now, or not answer that message right now. But in the long run, it's kind of like it is the play.
I think that justification of like kind of productivity and the production of value is something that everybody, I think a lot of people feel, and it just kind of manifests in Overwatch, but it's definitely not a unique concept to that.
No. I've always tried to be efficient with my time, but sometimes, the demands of whatever situation you have, but pushes you out of it. But you really have to keep pushing yourself back in. Stop, catch yourself, go back.
But I believe you when you say it's very hard.
Oh, it's very hard.
That, and probably for you, one of the difficult things is like, your social circle isn't necessarily like you have a community that you've built here.
Yeah.
And you have your wife, and you have like kind of your staff.
Yeah.
And then you have your family that's at a distance, but not too far. But other than that, it's like, who recognizes how hard things are for you, and who's there to be able to help that? It's like, who really gets it? Who can really get how hard that is specifically without a long explanation that's just going to exhaust the both of you?
Yeah, I mean, I have these conversations with my dad, and he's dealing with some of the similar issues because he does his own business and his own work and self-employed, and so it's like it is a little bit sometimes like where we're feeling the same thing, so we're not fully understanding exactly where each other are coming from.
What's he say?
He's always very supportive. He's always very supportive, and like they've always been very supportive of whatever I've done, which is great. But it is hard. It's not always easy, especially like financially, I've been doing, we've been doing much better, but it's still, you're still self-employed. You're still paying self-employment taxes. And, as the income goes up, the expenses also go up, right? Like paying for editors now and paying for thumbnails now. And, and there's a lot more expenses that kind of come along that way as well. And I mean, I don't think people realize I actually break even on YouTube between the editing and the thumbnails, really, for the most part. So that's kind of like, that's how it is. It is what it is. I would like those numbers to continue to grow up. And I think that like I'm at a point where I would maybe in the next year that I could definitely justify those 2.5 steps back, because I don't have to feel like, oh no, I'm making a financially irresponsible decision. But that's the goal anyway.
Have you thought much about your future and kind of how long? Because it seems like
Yeah.
a lot of the
More
a lot
recently,
of this is very very present focused of this chaos that's kind of moving throughout, and you're
Yes.
managing it and straightening it out. But
Yes.
what
I
I'm
have thought
suspicious
about
of is that
that.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, recently, I guess I can say this, but there was the hero design position that was opened up for Overwatch, right? And I was messaged by somebody within Blizzard. I don't really want to say who it was, but they asked me to apply for the position because there was people within Blizzard that wanted me to have the job, or at least try for the job, right? Like obviously not like they're just going to hand me the job, but like they wanted me to apply for it.
Yeah.
And that had this long conversation about like it ended up not working out because I didn't want to work and I didn't want to relocate. Because the whole reason I'm here is because of family. And
Yeah,
put
for
all
the
this
family,
effort,
it's like,
right.
all right, let's go to Irvine. You can be close to your buddy Stephano.
Exactly. That would be a plus. But yeah, long story short is like that was very flattering and very exciting moment. But it was also a little bit sobering because it's also like, what is my long-term plan here? And I don't really want to work for Blizzard, honestly, right? Like even if it was remote, I don't know. I like being my own self-employed guy.
Well, in a man of your position, it can be very tempting to not face the sort of shadow of the future in the eye. You can just kind of keep your head down and keep moving and just hope it doesn't look at you.
Right.
And then you wake up and you went to the beach and made you old and now you're old.
Right. Exactly. I hate that beach. But then it's like you're like, what is the future for me? And I think like I have a better picture of what it was now than I did before. Not because I've thought about it more.
Ago?
Yeah. I've tried to branch a little bit more. I think into the game design, the hero design. I've branched a little bit more into making certainly, I guess, not maybe in the last year, but the last year and a half, like really leaning into like the life advice and the coaching and the philosophy of things, and that's very interesting to me. And then even like branching into other games as well, right? I don't really know what I see myself in a few years. And I think that's always been something that's kind of struggled with. It's not just that like I'm scared to face the music necessarily. I'm not scared to face the music. I've always had long-term goals with almost everything that I've ever done, any job I've ever had. I knew where I was going. With this one, I just don't really know I don't know what the end goal is. I don't know if it is just to be Overwatch forever.
You're kind of going through a tunnel right now, and you don't know.
Right. Basically, okay. Here's the one. I'm actually more concerned. I'm less concerned about the game's future and more concerned about my future within the game. Because as long as I have something to do within Overwatch, I will love it. As long as I continue to learn and solve and it evolves and I evolve with it. And you notice that like I've stuck my fingers into different things. Like I'm not just coaching, I'm not just macro coaching, right? Extended the arms out. But now it's game design and hero design and strategy and there's all these projects and ideas. Will there be a time when there's no more? I don't know. I think of all the games to get invested into, I think this one's a great one, despite what people say, because there is so much to talk about, right? New heroes and this and that, and Juno's been a great one. Juno's been like, man, like Juno is freaking hard, man. Like it's you have to bang your head at that wall for a while. But yeah, long term, I don't know. I think definitely more diverse because those
one of the
are
reasons.
Things
well, as a creator, like that is part of it too. Is like where do we go? What's the next projects and how can where's a comfortable place for me that's like balancing that sort of like 5-day plan that you have with like but then also it's like kind of what about Spilo's feature like like Mr. Jacob or whatever,
right?
Like, what is because like you had mentioned like breaking even on YouTube and stuff like that, or like and you can you've got this financial thing here, but it's like what if what about children and things like that? It's like how will that work out and things? Have you been thinking about that much?
Yeah, I mean, as always, it's definitely like thinking about that like the long-term approach, but it's almost like the finances are like the box I want to check so I don't have to think about it, really. Like I think like everybody else, more money is good, but that's never really been my motivating factor for any point in my life. I want to feel like what I'm doing is meaningful in terms of helping and supporting other people. That's always been the most important thing for me. And then also feeling like I'm scratching that competitive and or learning itch, right?
Yeah.
That we talked about. And so for me, I'm partly like, okay, where's the game going to be 4 years from now? Where's my financial position? Can this game support me making $110,000 a year? Or $100,000 a year, right? Because we're not there yet, and it might be, I don't know if, I think so. I mean, we had these conversations when I first initially started. I was like estimating how many subs do I think I could get. Like, I think my initial estimate was that I think within my content niche, I think I can get 100,000 subs on YouTube. I don't know. It might take a long time, but I think there's enough people that are interested in what I do out there. I just have to find them, And so, like, what was my ceiling with the YouTube income? I think I think another thing I said was like 400, 500 viewers on Twitch. I think is like, I just like, again, the ceiling probably for like the type of stuff or the type of personality that I am, And okay, so then what can I get out of that, And I think it was like, okay, that's a reasonable financial ceiling for like what I'm looking to do. But the question for me is like, all right, well then how long am I going to feel a sense of self-satisfaction out of what I do? Because you can grit your teeth and do it, but and that's why I stopped pursuing professional Overwatch, especially at that last London season. It's like I don't feel it anymore, And
right.
So that's why, ironically, the biggest thing that's always kind of stood out to me for a long time as being like a long-term vision is like a deeper commitment, part-time, on the side just for fun, but definitely, at least as a hobbyist, a deeper commitment to music of all things, actually.
Yeah.
And that's definitely something
I was gonna ask you as kind of like a wrap-up question.
Yeah.
That's kind of relevant to this is a lot of people will ask you like, where do you see yourself in 5 years, or where do you see yourself in 10 years? But I hate those questions. I don't like them because I don't think people answer them well, anyways. They can be fun sometimes, but what I prefer is what do you want to be like when you're 70? What do you want your life to be like?
I want my family to be close. I want family. Just a social circle. I think that's the thing that I have learned the most out of the tight social circle that I do have with my family and my wife. And even within, the Patreon community, right? Like you guys have given me a sense of like social like connection that I like. Even the trip to Dallas, like that was the best part of the trip for me, really. Like it's just hanging out with you guys. And so, but then also kind of what I've missed, right? Like being on this path, and especially post the martial arts thing. I wasn't particularly close friends with a lot of people there, but I did build some meaningful connections and just being around people. And I think like that's something I'd love to maintain. I realize the importance of that through its absence, right? Through the kind of work and the commitment that I've been for so many years, 4 or 5 years now. And learning still and improving still. And I think music is definitely like the long-term one for me, but just continuing to learn. And I think physical health as well. Athletics, big one for me too. Really, really enjoy.
Be a buff old man, yeah.
Be a buff old man, right? Can run fast, jump high.
That's your motto. I'm gonna be a buff old man.
I mean, how many basically 30-year-old dudes do you know that are doing like vertical jump training, like they're training for like their NC? Like I'm proud of that. I work at that. I love it. It's fun for me. Like it gives me purpose with my fitness training as well. So I love that kind of stuff. It's fun for me. I love learning. My grandfather. Both of my grandfathers, I think I've mentioned this in the last interview, were huge inspirations for me because my grandfather sold his electrical engineering business for like multi-million dollars after inventing all this crazy stuff, and then proceeded to become like an expert photographer, an expert woodworker, crafted his own grandfather clock. It's beautiful. And he got into.
I remember you told me about the grandfather.
Yeah,
clock.
So it's like that kind of stuff. It's like that's what I love. I love just pursuing knowledge and pursuing learning and competing and doing different experiences, and so.
I would be interested to hear more about it, especially going after you've had some more time to think. I want you to think about what you're going to be like as a grandfather, like what the little tiny new Spilos of the I guess they're going to be Reinhardt age. Are the children being born now Reinhardt's age?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
okay,
I think so.
So what are you going to be like as a grandfather?
I'll be older than Reinhardt. Yeah, so
yeah. What are you going to be like as a grandfather? What do you want to be seen as? How do you picture your family being? What does that look like actually? And but you don't have to answer me, but that's something to think about, I think.
So you're not asking where am I in 5 or 10? You're asking where am I in 50 years, basically.
Yeah. I want you to,
question.
because it's more nebulous, but it's also I think a bit more. I think it gets a bit better honest.
It's a life mission instead of like a business mission,
Yeah. It's just how would you like things to turn out, actually?
Yeah. I can see that.
All right, man.